and welcome to the BCU Alumni podcast. I'm Bethan from BCU's Alumni team, and in each episode we welcome a different member of our alumni community back onto campus to chat all about what they've been up to since they graduated from BCU. Today we're joined by India Daley. India graduated with a BA Honours in Criminology and Security Studies back in 2020, and she's now a Vice President in Cyber Fraud at Barclays. Thanks to her degree, skills and experience, India is also a hunter on Channel 4's hit series Hunted. The show follows 12 ordinary people who go on the run but must remain undetected for 3 weeks in the hopes of winning a share of £100,000. An expert team of hunters use modern policing and security methods to find and capture the participants. But her journey to BCU wasn't straightforward, and working in a male-dominated industry, India often finds herself as the only female in the room. So in this episode, we'll be discussing India's incredible career so far, the key skills she uses each day in her role, and her advice to those following in her footsteps. India, welcome to the BCU Alumni podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about your journey to BCU then, and what inspired you to study here.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not, as you said, have a straightforward journey to BCU. I didn't think I was going to end up in Birmingham at all. It wasn't even on my list, Birmingham. I had a kind of radius geographically where I wanted to be. I wasn't even looking at Birmingham. I'd just come back from a year in America. So I spent a year doing sort of psychology and forensics in the US out in California, which was absolutely fantastic. And I came back to the UK a little bit kind of lost, to be honest, a little bit unsure about kind of where to go. I took a year out to try and figure out where exactly I might want to end up. Yeah. And it was actually someone who recommended to me, said, oh, you kind of like criminology, that kind of thing. You should look at Birmingham City because they've got this professor, David. I'm like, who is this guy? And of course it was David Wilson. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'll take a quick look at the university, and came for an open day and just absolutely fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the lecturers, the atmosphere, the city, all of it. And I was sort of sold on it from that point onwards.
So what was it about criminology and security studies then that really appealed to you?
So I maybe had come from a slightly different background, having just done that year in the US previously, because in the US they do a very liberal arts system where you generalize in your study at university. It's kind of more similar to how A levels are in the UK. Okay. And so you don't, when you go into uni, you don't immediately specialize in what you're going to study. And I was a bit like, well, I kind of, unlike probably most kids, really always knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to do kind of psychology, security, criminology style things, and the US just wasn't really offering me that at the time. And so when I came here, I was like, oh, this is fantastic because you get to specialize in what you want to do. And even more so with the security studies, you can focus on intelligence, you can focus on terrorism, you can focus on politics and all that kind of stuff, rather than having that like broader aspect to it. You really get to study that area where your passion is.
So what were you like as a student at BCU then? And what kind of things did you get involved with?
So I started out as a student at BCU very, very nervous, very much feeling like I lived over in University Locks just across the way. I absolutely loved it. I think I was the second cohort ever to live in that building. So it was amazing. Okay. It was all brand new and fantastic. Yeah. But I very much felt like I was maybe a little bit out of step with my peers in University Locks. Everybody was a little bit younger than me, and a bit fresh out of school, and I was a little bit older, and I sort of thought, oh, maybe I'm not going to find the right footing here, and and I very quickly realised actually that doesn't matter, and I got myself involved in the netball society. Pretty quickly after I joined, I went to do netball tryouts. Hadn't played a lick of netball since I was probably about 12, but just thought like I really enjoy it. It keeps you fit, keeps you moving. Like I'll go give it a go, and then realised that maybe I'm not half bad at shooting in netball, and quite quickly made the team. And so you often find me kind of on the Bucks Wednesdays out doing the sports, and then out on the theme nights and things, and doing that. And then if not, really you'd probably find me somewhere in the Curzon building, chatting to lecturers or studying in the library.
Did you ever get to really do much with David Wilson?
Yeah, so when I was in my first year, David taught the kind of, I forget the exact name of it, but David taught the Introduction to Criminology module that we all did. And maybe about halfway through the year, he said, I've got this documentary, because of course David's constantly doing different TV shows and bits and pieces. And he said, I'm doing a documentary in Wales about a young boy who they think may have gone on to be Jack the Ripper. Right,
God.
but it's an unconfirmed connection, and he was maybe a murderer over in Wales, and maybe he grew up and went to be a Ripper. And he said, I'm going to do this documentary in Wales about this boy and his life. And he said, I'm looking for some students to come with me. And I was like, absolutely, yes, please. I would love to do that. Was really fortunate that David chose me to go with him and do it, myself and another student. So we went over to Wales. It was amazing, and we spent some time in a old kind of theatre town hall in Wales with a bunch of other experts in their fields. There was like a forensic psychologist, pathologist, David with his criminology and all of this. And we filmed this documentary. I think it's called Dark Sun. And it had been called Dark Sun. It was aired on BBC, and that was a really amazing experience. I loved every second of that.
So tell me about your first roles, kind of after graduating. Then, what were those kind of initial steps like for you?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I was a victim of the COVID pandemic when it came to graduating from BCU. And, I'm sure that experience hit differently for everyone at different points in their degree journey. But for me, we went into lockdown right as I was doing my dissertation in third year. So I finished my dissertation at home rather than here, which was, a little bit of a shame. But it also meant that when you were looking at prospects after graduating, it was harder to kind of work out what the right steps were, because the whole world was shut down, right? So where do you go? How do you get a job? What's the right thing to do? So I ended up deciding, I'm going to pursue a master's degree. Let's go get a master's. Now more than ever is the time to do it. Nobody's doing anything. So I thought, great, I'll get a master's degree. So I signed up and was accepted at King's College in London for intelligence and international security, and thought, this is brilliant. And then I kind of thought, hang on a minute. I'm just going to be sat in my house on my own doing this degree online. I'm not really going to have anything to do, or to anyone to, kind of get me engaged in the world of intelligence and security, because as I say, again, the world was completely shut down. So I decided, actually, you know what, I'll try and see what roles are available so that I can do my master's alongside actually getting a start in my career. Because unfortunately, I know obviously COVID's looked at negatively in terms of the impact it had, but the benefits for me, or the silver lining, if you like, was that because everything was online, I was able to then say, actually, you know what? I don't need to be physically on campus in London, 3 days a week to do this master's. I can do it online. All the lectures were online. It was brilliant. And then I can work full time. So I landed a role as an intelligence officer working kind of privately. And that was just opened a door to a whole world of things. It's absolutely fantastic. So I ended up doing kind of geopolitics, political risk, a lot of kidnap and ransom work. And then probably about maybe a year and a half after I'd landed there, we ended up with sort of the Russia-Ukraine war kicking off and Russia invading Ukraine, and that was a really fascinating time to be in that field, to be in that industry. And you never quite can predict, as much as I'm sure geopolitical analysts would like to tell you they can never quite predict when these things are going to happen, but it was a great time to be there because I was able to take part and help in operations around that. So that was really, really fascinating. Was able to help extract equipment, factory equipment and parts for different manufacturing bits and pieces from the country in the midst of the invasion, which was really interesting. They sort of throw you in at the deep end type of experience.
So you've been at Barclays for about 3.5 years now. So tell me what it was like to work your way up to a vice president position so early in your career.
3.5 years really feels like it's flown by, I can tell you that. I joined Barclays to kind of expand my career in intelligence, and I joined their threat intelligence department obviously a couple of years ago, and the idea at the time was that I was going to set up a brand new function that they didn't have, right? So a lot of people don't realize that companies like Barclays, any kind of big corporate that you can think of or name today, will have a version of a kind of chief security office with usually different areas within that: physical security, threat intelligence, whatever it may be. be. And Barclays had that, but what it didn't have was a comprehensive view of what its intelligence requirements were at the time. And I was brought in to kind of help with that. So what are our intelligence requirements? What do we actually need to know? What can sometimes happen in the world of intel is people kind of get led by headlines. So they see what's on the news, they see, this paper's saying this, and it's sort of fear mongering and whatnot. And then we're going to focus on that. And actually my role was to bring us back to, what does Barclays care about? What does the organisation need to think about to protect its staff, to protect its customers? What are our focuses? So I came in to do that, and that very quickly kind of grew into a much bigger role probably than even I anticipated at the time. Ended up looking after a lot of our vendors, suppliers. So they outsource a lot of the intelligence requirements to vendors. So I ended up looking after a lot of those in that role. And then I sort of just got to a point where I felt like I needed to try something different, try a new challenge, and see where I could kind of go next with that. It kind of built itself up where everything was, business as usual. Then I've got these things set up. Everybody's got their requirements. I kind of know what's happening. Don't trust me. It's not perfect by any means, but it can be passed to someone else to run. And so where do I want to go? So Barclays has a fantastic part of the Chief Security Office that's called the Cyber Fraud Fusion Centre. And there was an opportunity that came up there within the intelligence and operations team within that area to help go and manage operations there. And I just thought, I've got to do it, right? It's maybe a jump away from the threat intelligence world that I was used to in my previous roles, and kind of being like pure intel, pure security drive. But you have to also bear in mind that intelligence is quite a small world. It's quite a niche world. And sometimes if you want to kind of, progress particularly upwards, I feel you have to be willing to take those opportunities elsewhere that maybe are not directly where you thought you might land, or directly where you thought you might end up, maybe adjacent to that area. And this was exactly that for me. I'm not a fraud analyst. I'm not totally an expert in fraud. I'm not an SME on all that kind of stuff, but I am good at intelligence, and I know I can bring that to that team. And I'm also, good at my operations management side of it. I can bring that to that team, and that's kind of what I did really. And that opportunity presented itself, and I was really lucky to get that position, and have been doing that for almost a year now.
So can you tell me about what your role in cyber fraud really involves then? Yeah,
absolutely. So as I say, I'm not a fraud analyst. I'm not a fraud SME. People do love to come to me and say, is this a scam? Is this real? I'm like, no, I'm not the expert. You probably shouldn't ask me. There's a lot of really, really clever people that I work with that can definitely tell you the answer, but it's probably not me. If you want to ask me about maybe geopolitics or where the world's going, maybe I'd give you an answer, but I'm not a fraud expert. So my role within the team is very much to kind of keep the ship afloat, if you like. That's always the simplest way I would describe it. What we do in the Cyber Fraud Fusion Centre, specifically within the intelligence and operations team where I work, is we try and identify control gaps within the organisation. So areas where we might be seeing higher numbers of fraud, or higher losses, or higher volumes of attack. And then we form what are called, what are known as tiger teams, to try and combat those and bring together, I think we have over 70 different fraud teams within the bank that come together within the Fusion Centre to help identify a problem from what you would say is left to right. So if you have an attack chain of where a fraud starts versus where it ends, we try and identify the entire attack chain from left to right, and then find out where we can implement better controls along that journey. And then within that, sort of my role is keep it all moving, keep it going, and identify ways to enable the team to do that work more efficiently, to do it better, and also to support the intelligence team in their analysis of their work and their understanding of the wider kind of context around how all these things fit in, because fraud is as you can imagine, is a widely consuming world. Fraud is huge, especially to a bank, of course. It's massive. It can sometimes be so big that you get lost within it, and you get lost with what is outside of fraud, i.e. what's driving the fraud that we're seeing. We get a bit caught up in, these are the different MOs, these are the different scam types, different fraud typologies, and this is what we're seeing. But actually, what's some of the wider context and perspective to why these things are happening, why the trends and the analysis, why are we seeing this when we're seeing it, and what's driving it?
We have to talk about Hunted.
Absolutely.
I've been so excited for this because you know how much I love Hunted. So how did the opportunity come about for you to even work on the show?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is the really short answer, and it's always a learning lesson I say to people about keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date. Keep your LinkedIn profile up to date, particularly if you're a fresh graduate and you've just finished university. I think a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking, I don't have much to put on there. I haven't had a job yet, or I haven't had a career role. Like, what do I put on my LinkedIn? It doesn't matter. LinkedIn's great. You can put any qualification you've had. You can put work experience. You can put anything at all on there. You can even just write about yourself, and even if you haven't done a particular career role yet, you can still have a voice on something and in an industry without having done that. So LinkedIn was the way that Hunted came about for me. I got a message one day from the fantastic production company that make the show, based off of my kind of profile and my experience and some of the work that I'd done. And obviously at the time I was working in private intelligence and doing a lot of sort of, like I say, open source investigations and political risk and that kind of stuff. And they reached out, and I think honestly at first I thought, this is not real. I was going to say, I can't imagine
receiving that message. I'd be like, this obviously isn't legit.
100%. I was like, this is not real. Absolutely not. And I don't know what it was that made me go, maybe just message them back, and see. And then that very quickly turned into, can you come to London and meet with us and have a chat? And we did a couple of Zooms and things. And then, I was really lucky that they offered me a spot on the show.
So what's it like to work on the show then? And also, is it as intense as it obviously appears on the TV?
Yes, absolutely it is. It's really hard to describe what it's like working on Hunted because it's just such a unique experience. I hope the show never ends. I'm sure it will eventually have to, but I really hope it doesn't, because you just don't know when you ever get an experience like that again. It absolutely is as intense as it seems on the show. I have in the past made the mistake of looking on Twitter or X and seeing people saying, why are these hunters so excited? Why do they look so, God, they're so worked up. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. But you just don't know what it's like until you're in that room, until you're there. And, I'm fortunate. I've just finished my 3rd year filming for the show this year. And each year I go into it and I think, I'm not gonna get, it's just a show. It's just a game. It doesn't matter. It's fine. And then within 5 minutes of launch, you are, right, I'm going to get them all. This is, and the way we tend to, so I work on as an intelligence officer on the show. So I work on what's called the IO desk. There's usually about 4 or 5 IOs on the show. And we will split up the pairs between us usually. So I'll take maybe two sets of fugitives and someone else take the other 2. So you get really invested in your pairs as well, because you learn everything about these people. You're learning their entire lives. You're learning their personalities, their patterns, their movements, all of that stuff. And so you kind of get to a point where you're like, I'm so invested in this. I need to see it through to the end,
So what's the best thing about being a hunter then? And what has kind of been like your highlights on being on the show over the last few years?
I think one of my highlights for being on the show is just the sheer camaraderie that you get on the show. Everybody in that room in the HQ is phenomenal at what they do. And the ground hunters are equally as amazing, but they're out and about kind of on the streets. We don't really see them as much as we do, try and obviously keep in touch, but we don't see them as much as we do in HQ. And when you're in there day in, day out, and we're in there, for long periods of time, and it can get very intense, as I say, is exactly as intense as it looks on the show. Things can get hot very quickly, and suddenly it's all kicking off and people are shouting and yelling and someone's telling you they've got this and they've seen that, and you're trying to keep it all together. And I think the highlight for me is just watching everybody work together in that room and all the kind of synergy. And someone says a name and someone's like, oh, I know that name. I've seen it in their, in their bank statement or in the social media, and it kind of all just clicks into place. And that's really a great sort of example of what should happen when you do a good investigation, right? And when everybody does their part in that investigation, you've got the cyber guys, you've got us on the intel desk, you've got the analysts, and everybody's doing their part. It all suddenly comes together really beautifully, and suddenly you get this big synergy in the room of everyone going, oh my goodness. And that's what I love. I haven't yet been able to kind of replicate that feeling anywhere else. It's amazing.
So you work in what is still very much a male-dominated industry. So what's it like to often be the only woman in the room then?
Yeah, so I think security and intelligence naturally, I think it's important to say, is male dominated generally as a sector, as an industry, because a lot of the folks that go into that industry come from kind of military, policing, government backgrounds, right? That's why you get that lean towards a male dominated industry. It's not for any nefarious reasons, it's just that you tend to have the right skills and experience if you come from a background in the military, in the police, in government. Overwhelmingly, we see a lot of women that come out of those sectors, so policing, military, choose then not to pursue continued careers in those areas. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what we can do to better tackle that, but it is something we see more men filter into kind of private sector roles, continuing that journey from military or police. So you can end up with a slight tip the other way, whereas a lot of the women I know that work in this industry, and there are some fantastic women in this industry, but they tend to come from the more academic background. They tend to, like myself, have done degrees, they've done master's degrees, they've maybe written theses, done research and whatnot, and come into it that way. But that being said, I know some fantastic ex-military women that have come from the police or ex-mil, and they're absolutely wonderful. I'm really fortunate at the moment that Barclays does a lot to try and actively work on that problem. The team I'm in at the moment, we have a lot of women in the team. It's really, really lovely to see. I think we might actually be more top heavy with women than we are with men right now, which is fantastic. You want that balance, right? You want it to be representative at all levels in the organization. Barclays has a couple of really great programs that it runs, one of which is a program called Women in Cyber. And that essentially is just a community of women like myself and any women that have worked in cyber in some way, shape or form, that is open to any of those who work at Barclays that don't work in that area, but have an interest or have a passion. And all it tries to do is essentially open the door to them and say, kind of, walk towards us. It's not scary. You don't need to know 15 different coding languages or have been a Royal Marine or a SEAL to come and do these roles. Cyber and intelligence and security is a huge, huge landscape, and people often just kind of see it on face value, and they think, okay, this is where you need to have like all this kind of knowledge around coding and writing languages and all this different stuff. And actually there's so many different areas within it. Our chief security office and would be the same for many other companies. You've got physical security investigations, you've got geopolitics, you've got you do have the cyber element of it, you've got insider, you've got intelligence, you've got all these different areas, and they need diversity of voices to make them work. A great analyst knows you need to look at all different sides of an argument. You need to look at all different sides of a situation. Well, the best way to do that is get a diverse number of voices in the room and get the different perspectives to build that picture. So we're constantly trying to encourage more folks to kind of come into the industry and see what they can contribute. Everyone's got something to contribute.
So what skills did you gain at BCU then that you applied to your current role at Barclays and also your role on Hunted?
Analysis. Absolutely. I came to university and kind of not really knowing how to. I've written an essay at A level maybe with for an exam or whatnot, but not really understanding what it means to truly analyze something and look at it from different perspectives and really understand how to take your own bias out of it, how to think critically is a huge one. And I got those skills at BCU. Doing the criminology and security course was an amazing way to learn, okay, here's how to actually do that analysis, and sitting with lecturers and having them kind of talk you through your arguments or defend your arguments, right? Like, okay, you think this, but why do you think this? And if I give you a counterpoint, how do you counter that back, or how do you balance it or factor it into your argument, was a huge, huge thing. And that's something that has worked really, really well for me in my career, because, both on Hunted and when I'm doing my day job, you have to be able to think critically, and you have to be able to do a certain level of analysis that's going to get you to where you need to be in order to, in a way, kind of think like the bad guys, right? Put yourself in their shoes, think a little bit differently, and not kind of just get led down a very narrow-minded single track road. And that's what being a good analyst is, really. And I definitely wouldn't have that without BCU.
So this is something we love to do in every episode, which is a Birmingham quick fire round. So what is your favourite spot on the BCU campus?
Oh, this is difficult, but I'm gonna just blanketly say the Curzon building because I absolutely love that building.
Okay, would you rather go to Snobs or Pop World?
Snobs.
Nice. Blues or Villa?
I can't. I'm gonna get in so much trouble if I commit to either one. I can't. Unfortunately.
Okay, who do you support?
I was raised in a Manchester City household.
Okay.
You used to have to go sleep in the shed if you didn't support City in my house. So I'm City all the way through, unfortunately.
Okay. Broad Street or Digbeth?
Broad Street.
What is your favourite Brummie landmark?
I don't know if it counts as a landmark, but I love the Birmingham Cathedral, and more specifically the kind of the Snow Hill area, you know,
like Cornwall Row.
Yeah, Cornwall Row, up where the kind of like the park kind of is, where the cathedral is, you know, the little area. I used to live up in that area and I just loved it in the summer.
Yeah, that's a good spot. And what is your best Brummie word?
Okay, and again, I don't know if this is a Brummie word, so to speak, but I love the divide or the debate between kind of the South, the Midlands and the North in that conversation around what is a roll called or a bap or you know, is it a bap, is it a roll, is it a sandwich even? Like, no, absolutely not. You know, I love that debate, and I think that's probably my favorite.
Well, what do you call it then?
It depends what it is. If it's a bacon thing, then it's a bacon bap.
Okay.
But then if it was like a sausage and egg, then it's probably a roll. And I love that, you know, to me, it can be, I don't mind, it can be anything, but I love that in Birmingham and particularly Brummies can get quite like defensive about it. You know, it's got a name and they prefer one version or another. You'll find people are quite protective about. Yeah. I love that.
I would probably say a cob.
There you go.
Most of the time.
Cob.
Yeah, I'd probably say cob, but then there's certain things that I'm like, that's a bap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people get quite defensive about it, and I absolutely love that. But I think that just speaks to kind of the regional accents, and it's amazing. Yeah.
And final question then, if you could go back to your very first day here at BCU, what is one piece of advice you would now give yourself?
I think I would probably tell myself to just slow down. Slow down, take your time, you are not behind. You know, I came to BCU really believing that I was several years behind where all my peers were that I graduated school with, and I was never going to catch up, and there was just, what was the point almost, because it's too late, like everybody, the train has left the station, everybody's gone. And then I got here and I very quickly realised actually it doesn't matter. We're all on a different journey, we're all on different parts of that journey, and things will happen at the right time for you as and when, you know, they're meant to, and you just need to slow down and enjoy the moment. Just enjoy being on the journey and just don't try and rush it.
India, thank you so much for coming on to the BCU Alumni podcast today. It's been so inspiring and also just really interesting to learn more about your journey so far, and we can't wait to see you again very soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for listening. You can check out more episodes of the BCU Alumni podcast on our YouTube channel now. Thank you, and we'll see you again very soon.